The glass of soda tumbled off the table, crashing to the floor and spilling its fizzy contents everywhere. Jake stood frozen, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. The restaurant had gone silent, save for the mocking laughter of the three burly bikers looming over him. They were big men with thick leather jackets and an air of arrogance that seemed to suck the oxygen out of the room. One of them leaned closer, his face a mask of derision. "Oops," he sneered, his voice loud enough to echo. "Looks like the boy's hands aren't steady. Maybe he needs a lesson in respect." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He was just a 10-year-old kid who had come in for a burger with his dad. Now, these men were trying to humiliate him in front of everyone. He opened his mouth to respond, but his words caught in his throat. The other customers in the diner looked on, some whispering, others pretending not to notice. No one dared to intervene. One of the bikers reached out and flicked Jake's cap off his head. "Hey kid," he said with a smirk, "why don't you shine my boots while you're down there?" Jake's dad, Adam, had been in the restroom when it started. But now he stood at the entrance, his eyes locked on the scene before him. His normally calm face was unreadable, but there was a storm brewing behind those piercing blue eyes. Adam wasn't just anyone, he was a retired Delta Force commander, a man who had faced some of the toughest missions in the world. And these bikers? They had no idea who they were messing with. Adam stepped forward, his boots making a deliberate sound against the tiled floor. Every eye in the room followed him as he crossed the diner. Jake's heart lifted at the sight of his dad, but there was also a flicker of fear. Adam's calm, measured approach only added to the tension. "What's going on here?" Adam's voice was steady, but it carried a weight that silenced the room. The biker who had flicked Jake's cap turned to Adam, sizing him up. "None of your business, old man," he said, his tone dismissive. Adam tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing. "That's my son," he said evenly. "Which makes it my business." The biker laughed, but it was forced. "And what are you gonna do about it?" Adam didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, his presence alone making the air feel heavier. The tension in the room reached its breaking point, and the bikers began to shift uncomfortably. What happened next would leave everyone in the diner talking for weeks. The diner had been lively earlier that evening. Jake and his dad had come in after a long day of fishing at the lake. They'd caught nothing but weeds, but the time together had been worth it. Adam always made Jake laugh with his stories, and tonight had been no different. They'd walked into the diner laughing, Jake teasing his dad about his terrible fishing skills. They picked a booth by the window, the smell of burgers and fries making Jake's stomach growl. A cheerful waitress named Becky came over to take their order. She smiled warmly at Jake as he asked for a double cheeseburger with extra pickles. Adam ordered a steak sandwich and coffee. "And a root beer for him," Adam added, nodding toward Jake. "Coming right up," Becky said with a wink. Jake loved these moments with his dad. Adam was his hero, though he rarely talked about his time in the military. All Jake knew was that his dad had served in some elite unit and had medals tucked away in a box somewhere. But to Jake, Adam was just the guy who taught him how to ride a bike, helped him with math homework, and told the best bedtime stories. They were halfway through their meal when the bikers arrived. The door swung open with a jingle, and the three men stomped in, their boots leaving mud on the tile floor. They were loud, laughing and shoving each other as they made their way to the counter. Becky's smile faltered as she greeted them, but she took their orders without complaint. Jake tried to ignore them, but it was hard. The men were rude, talking over Becky and making obnoxious comments. Adam seemed unfazed, cutting his sandwich into neat halves. "They're just looking for attention," Adam said quietly, noticing Jake's uneasy glance toward the men. "Ignore them." Jake nodded and focused on his burger. For a while, things went back to normal. But then, one of the bikers spotted Jake's cap, a red baseball cap with the logo of his favorite basketball team. "Hey kid," the man called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "That's a nice hat. Where'd you get it?" Jake looked up, unsure if he was being friendly or not. My dad got it for me," he said. The biker grinned, but there was no kindness in it. "Looks expensive. But you can't even play basketball, can you?" Jake didn't answer. His dad had always taught him to be polite, but something about the man's tone made his stomach churn. "Leave him alone," Becky said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. The biker ignored her and walked over to their booth, his two friends following. Jake felt his dad's hand rest gently on his shoulder, a silent reassurance. "What's your problem?" Adam asked, his voice calm but firm. "No problem," the biker said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Just making conversation." "Then keep it friendly," Adam replied, his gaze never wavering. The biker smirked but backed off, returning to his table. Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. For a while, it seemed like the encounter was over. But then came the spilled soda. And the mocking laughter. And now, Adam was standing face to face with the men who had pushed things too far. The bikers didn't know it yet, but they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Adam stared at the biker who had flicked Jake's cap. His face was calm, but his eyes told a different story. Jake had seen this look before, once when someone tried to steal from their garage, and another time when a neighbor's dog lunged at Jake. It was a look that meant trouble for whoever was on the receiving end. The lead biker, the one with a skull tattoo on his neck, leaned forward, his bravado masking an underlying tension. "What are you looking at, old man? You want to take this outside?" Adam didn't flinch. His voice was low and steady. "You've got two choices. Apologize to my son, or walk out of here and don't come back." The other two bikers laughed, their amusement filling the room. But Skull Tattoo wasn't laughing anymore. His pride wouldn't let him back down. He puffed out his chest and stepped closer to Adam, their faces inches apart. "What if I don't feel like doing either?" the man challenged. Adam's reply was simple. "Then I'll make you feel like it." The room was deathly silent. Becky froze mid-step with a tray of food. A man at a nearby table reached for his phone, though it wasn't clear if he planned to call the police or record the impending clash. Jake watched, his eyes wide with both fear and awe. His dad wasn't a big man, but he carried himself with a confidence that made him seem larger than life. Skull Tattoo chuckled, a nervous edge creeping into his voice. "You think you can take us? There's three of us, and only one of you." Adam didn't respond immediately. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, closing the distance. "You sure about that?" he said softly. The biker blinked, caught off guard by Adam's calm intensity. For a moment, it seemed like he might back down. But then one of the other bikers, a burly man with a beard like a grizzly bear, stood up and cracked his knuckles. "Let's show him who he's messing with," Grizzly Beard said, stepping forward. Before anyone could react, Adam moved. His hand shot out like lightning, grabbing Skull Tattoo's wrist and twisting it in one fluid motion. The biker yelped in pain as he dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled through the diner as Adam kept his grip firm, his eyes locked on the other two bikers. "Sit down," Adam ordered, his voice cold. Grizzly Beard hesitated, looking at his friend on the floor. The third biker, a wiry man with a shaved head, fidgeted nervously, clearly rethinking his options. "Let him go," Grizzly Beard growled, stepping closer. Adam didn't even look at him. Instead, he leaned in towards Skull Tattoo and spoke quietly. "Apologize." Skull Tattoo grunted, his face contorted in pain. "I'm sorry, kid. Okay? I'm sorry." Jake's heart was pounding so hard he could barely hear the words. His dad released the biker's wrist, and Skull Tattoo scrambled backward, cradling his arm. The other two bikers helped him up, their tough guy act rapidly disintegrating. "You've got 10 seconds to leave," Adam said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The bikers didn't wait for him to start counting. They stumbled toward the door, their swagger replaced with humiliation. As they left, the diner erupted in murmurs, customers exchanging shocked glances. Becky set down her tray, her hands trembling. Adam turned back to Jake, his expression softening. "You okay, buddy?" Jake nodded, though his hands were still shaking. "Yeah, I'm okay." Adam ruffled his son's hair, a reassuring smile breaking through his stoic exterior. "Let's finish our dinner." The mood in the diner slowly returned to normal, though the buzz of what had just happened lingered in the air. Becky came over to their table, her voice shaky but filled with gratitude. "I don't know how you stayed so calm," she said. "Most people would have lost it." Adam shrugged, taking a sip of his coffee. "Experience," he said simply. Jake wanted to ask what kind of experience, but he knew his dad wouldn't elaborate. Adam rarely talked about his past, and Jake had learned not to push. Still, he couldn't help but feel a new level of admiration for his father. The rest of their meal passed uneventfully, though Jake couldn't stop glancing at the door, half expecting the bikers to come back. When they finally finished, Adam paid the bill and left a generous tip for Becky. "Thanks for your help," she said as they stood to leave. Just doing what anyone should, Adam replied. Outside, the cool night air felt refreshing after the tension inside. Jake climbed into the truck, still buzzing from everything that had happened. "Dad," he said as they pulled onto the road, "how did you do that? You didn't even look scared." Adam chuckled. "It's not about being scared, Jake. It's about knowing what to do when things go sideways." Jake frowned. "But how do you know what to do?" Adam hesitated for a moment, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. "I learned a long time ago," he said finally. "But it's not something you want to learn if you don't have to." Jake nodded, though he didn't fully understand. He watched the dark trees blur past the window, his dad's calm demeanor lingering in his mind. Adam might not talk about his past, but tonight had proven that there was more to him than meets the eye. As they pulled into their driveway, the headlights illuminated a figure standing near the porch. Adam's jaw tightened as he brought the truck to a stop. Jake squinted, trying to make out who it was. The man stepped into the light, revealing a leather jacket with a familiar skull emblem on the back. Jake's stomach dropped. "Dad, it's one of them." Adam's face was unreadable, but his voice was firm. "Stay in the truck." Jake's pulse quickened as Adam opened the door and stepped out, his movements calm and deliberate. The biker didn't look as cocky as he had earlier. In fact, there was a hint of nervousness in his stance. "What do you want?" Adam asked, his voice steady. The biker shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the truck where Jake sat watching. "We need to talk," he said, his tone far less aggressive than it had been in the diner. Adam folded his arms. "About what?" The biker hesitated, looking around as if to make sure no one else was watching. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and urgent. "It's about your son," he said. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." Adam's expression didn't change, but Jake could see the flicker of tension in his father's eyes. Whatever the biker was about to say, it was clear that this night was far from over. Adam didn't respond immediately. He stood still, his eyes locked on the biker like a predator sizing up its prey. The silence between them stretched, thick and heavy, as if the night itself was holding its breath. From the truck, Jake could barely make out what they were saying, but he could feel the tension growing. The biker shifted nervously, his tough demeanor cracking. "Look, I didn't come here to fight," he said, glancing over his shoulder like he was worried someone might be watching. "I came to warn you." Adam tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Warn me about what?" The man hesitated, his gaze darting toward the truck. He lowered his voice. "Those guys I was with, they're not just some bikers. They're connected." Adam didn't flinch. "Connected to what?" The biker looked around again, clearly uneasy. "You don't want to know. But let's just say they don't take humiliation lightly. What you did back there, that's not gonna sit well with them. They'll come after you. After your kid." Jake's stomach dropped. He pressed himself against the seat, trying to make himself invisible. He had never seen his dad scared before, but for the first time, he wasn't so sure. Adam's face remained calm, though there was a flicker of something in his eyes. "Is that a threat?" he asked, his voice so low it was almost a growl. The biker raised his hands defensively. "No, man. I swear. I'm trying to help you. I'm done with those guys. They're bad news, and I don't want to be part of it anymore." "Then why were you with them in the first place?" Adam asked, his tone sharper now. The biker looked down, his shoulders sagging. "I didn't have a choice. They run the local chapter of the Crimson Fangs, and if you're not with them, you're against them. But I've had enough. I've got kids of my own. I don't want this life for them." Adam studied the man for a long moment, weighing his words. "If you're telling the truth, you'd better leave town. Tonight." The biker nodded quickly. "I'm already packed. But you should know, they'll be back. And they'll bring more than just words." Adam's jaw tightened, and for the first time, a shadow of anger crossed his face. "If they come back, they won't leave standing." The biker took a step back, clearly unnerved by Adam's calm intensity. "Just, be careful," he said. "They don't play fair." Adam didn't respond. He watched silently as the man hurried back to a battered motorcycle parked near the curb. The engine roared to life, and moments later he was gone, leaving the night eerily quiet. Inside the truck, Jake's mind raced. He had never seen his dad so serious. The way Adam had handled the bikers in the diner had seemed almost effortless, but now it was clear that the situation was far more dangerous than Jake had realized. When Adam got back into the truck, he didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he sat silently, staring out the windshield. Jake finally worked up the courage to speak. "Dad," he said hesitantly, "what's going on? What did he mean about them coming after us?" Adam turned to look at Jake, his face softening just a little. "Don't worry about it, buddy. I'll handle it." "But—" "No buts," Adam said firmly. "It's my job to keep you safe. That's all you need to know." Jake wanted to argue, but the look in his dad's eyes stopped him. He had never seen Adam this serious before, and it scared him. Instead, he nodded quietly and leaned back in his seat, his mind swirling with questions. The next morning, Adam was up early, moving around the house with a quiet efficiency that Jake found both comforting and unsettling. He made breakfast as usual, pancakes and scrambled eggs, but there was an edge to him that Jake couldn't ignore. "Eat up," Adam said, placing a plate in front of Jake. "You've got soccer practice today, right?" Jake nodded, though he wasn't sure if he wanted to go. "Yeah, but what if those guys show up again?" Adam crouched down to Jake's level, his expression serious but calm. "Listen to me. Those men aren't going to hurt you. I won't let them. And I've got a plan to make sure they don't come near us again." "What kind of plan?" Jake asked, his voice small. Adam smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "The kind that works." Jake didn't fully understand, but he trusted his dad. He always had. Still, the lingering fear made it hard to enjoy breakfast. That evening, while Jake was at practice, Adam began preparing for the worst. He made a few calls to old friends, men he hadn't spoken to in years but knew he could count on. Some were retired military like him, others were law enforcement. All of them understood the gravity of the situation without needing much explanation. By the time Jake came home, Adam had secured the house. The windows had reinforced locks, the doors had been checked and rechecked, and a few extra precautions had been quietly put in place. Jake noticed some of the changes, but Adam brushed off his questions with a reassuring smile. "Just being cautious," he said. "It's good practice." The calm didn't last long. That night, as Jake was brushing his teeth before bed, the sound of engines rumbled in the distance. Adam, who had been sitting in the living room, immediately stood up. His movements were quick and precise, like a soldier preparing for battle. "Jake," Adam called, his voice calm but firm. "Come here." Jake ran into the living room, his toothbrush still in hand. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice trembling. Adam didn't answer. He walked to the window and peeked out through the curtains. The sound of the engines grew louder, and soon, headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. "They're here," Adam said quietly. Jake's heart pounded. "Who's here?" Adam turned to him, his face as calm as ever. "Go to your room and stay there. Lock the door. No matter what you hear, don't come out. Understand?" Jake wanted to argue, but the look in his dad's eyes stopped him. He nodded and ran to his room, his heart racing. He locked the door and climbed under his bed, clutching his knees to his chest. Outside, the roar of engines came to a stop. Adam stood at the door, waiting as shadows moved across the front yard. He could see at least 5 figures, maybe more, gathering near the porch. One of them called out, his voice loud and mocking. "Hey, old man. You think you're tough? Let's see how tough you are now." Adam didn't flinch. He opened the door slowly, stepping onto the porch. The night was cold and quiet, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "You made a mistake coming here," Adam said, his voice steady. The leader of the group stepped forward, a cruel smile on his face. "No, you made the mistake, thinking you could humiliate us and get away with it." Adam's eyes narrowed. "You've got one chance to leave. Take it." The man laughed, and the others joined in. "And if we don't?" Adam didn't answer. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his stance shifting slightly. Jake, still hiding under his bed, listened as the laughter outside stopped. Then came a loud crash, followed by shouting. The fight had begun. The sound of the crash jolted Jake under his bed. He clutched his knees tighter, trying to block out the growing chaos outside. He could hear shouting, the dull thud of blows landing, and the scrape of boots on the gravel driveway. His dad's calm but firm words echoed in his mind. "Stay in your room. Lock the door. No matter what you hear, don't come out." But the noise was terrifying. It sounded like a war was happening right outside their house. Jake's heart pounded as he tried to imagine what his dad was doing. He knew Adam was tough, but these men outnumbered him. What if they... A loud grunt and the unmistakable thud of someone hitting the ground interrupted Jake's thoughts. He froze, straining to hear what was happening. Then came another sound, a metallic clang, like a tool being thrown. The voices outside grew louder. "Hold him down," one of the men shouted. Jake's stomach sank. Were they overpowering his dad? Was Adam hurt? He couldn't stay hidden any longer. He crawled out from under the bed and pressed his ear to the door. The shouting continued, and his fingers hovered over the lock. He knew he'd promised to stay put, but he couldn't just sit there while his dad might be in danger. Outside, Adam was anything but overpowered. The fight had started the moment the leader of the group had made his threat. Adam had moved like a coiled spring, catching the nearest biker off guard with a swift punch to the jaw. The man crumpled instantly, falling back into one of his companions. The remaining bikers hesitated for a moment, shocked by the retired commander's speed. It was a hesitation Adam didn't waste. He grabbed a second man by the arm, twisting it sharply until the biker yelped in pain and dropped the crowbar he'd been holding. With a well-placed kick, Adam sent the crowbar skidding across the driveway, out of reach. The leader growled, motioning for the others to close in. "Get him," he barked. They rushed forward, but Adam was ready. Years of training kicked in, his movements efficient and calculated. He dodged a punch, countering with a quick jab that sent another man stumbling backward. Another swung a bat, but Adam ducked low, using the biker's own momentum to flip him onto the ground. Despite his skill, the numbers were against him. One of the bikers managed to grab his arm, and another landed a glancing blow to his side with a wooden plank. Adam grunted, the impact stinging but not enough to slow him down. He twisted free, elbowing one of his attackers in the ribs. The leader of the group stayed back, watching his men struggle. His face twisted in anger as he realized they were no match for the retired soldier. "You idiots," he yelled. "He's one guy. Take him down already." One of the bikers lunged with a knife, slashing wildly. Adam sidestepped, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it until the blade fell to the ground. He kicked it away before delivering a swift knee to the biker's stomach. The man crumpled, gasping for air. Inside, Jake could hear the fight moving closer to the house. His fear was growing, but so was his determination. He unlocked the door and cracked it open, just enough to peek out. From his vantage point, he could see the shadowy figures moving in the dim porch light. He spotted his dad, still holding his ground despite being surrounded. Jake's hands trembled. He wanted to help, but what could he do? He was just a kid. Then his eyes landed on the house phone sitting on the hallway table. Without thinking, he grabbed it and dialed 911. The leader of the bikers, frustrated and desperate, pulled a gun from his waistband. "Enough," he shouted, pointing the weapon at Adam. The other bikers froze, their bravado disappearing as they realized the situation had escalated. Adam stopped moving, his hand slowly rising in a gesture of compliance. But his eyes never left the leader's face. "Put the gun down," he said calmly. "You don't want to do this." The man sneered, his hand shaking slightly. "Oh, I think I do. You think you're tough? Let's see how tough you are when you're begging for your life." Adam took a small step forward, his voice steady. "I'm not the one who should be afraid." The leader's grip tightened on the gun. "Don't come any closer," he barked. Before he could react, the distant sound of sirens cut through the night. The bikers exchanged nervous glances, their confidence unraveling. "Cops," one of them shouted. The leader cursed, lowering the gun slightly. "Who called the cops?" Adam didn't answer, but a small, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. The sirens grew louder, flashing red and blue lights now visible in the distance. The bikers panicked, some turning to run while others stood frozen. The leader, realizing he was out of options, took a step back. "This isn't over," he snarled, pointing a finger at Adam. "You'll pay for this." Adam's eyes narrowed, his voice colder than ever. "Not if I see you first." The man hesitated for a moment before turning and running toward a waiting motorcycle. The remaining bikers scrambled to follow, their retreat chaotic as the first police car screeched to a stop at the end of the driveway. Jake watched from the doorway as the officers poured out of their cars, weapons drawn. Adam raised his hands to show he wasn't a threat, stepping aside as the police moved in to secure the scene. One of the officers, a tall woman with sharp eyes, approached Adam. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, glancing at the scattered weapons and bruised bikers who hadn't managed to escape. Adam nodded. "I'm fine. Just protecting my son." Jake, unable to stay hidden any longer, ran out of the house and threw his arms around his dad. Adam hugged him tightly, his calm facade cracking just enough to show relief. The officer looked at the two of them, her expression softening. "We'll need statements, but for now you're safe." Jake pulled back, looking up at his dad. "Are they coming back?" he asked, his voice small. Adam rested a hand on Jake's shoulder. "Not tonight," he said firmly. "And if they do, we'll be ready." But deep down, Adam knew the leader's parting words weren't an empty threat. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The bikers disappeared into the night, their roaring engines fading into the distance as the police secured the scene. Flashlights illuminated the driveway and yard as officers examined the scattered weapons and gathered evidence. Jake clung to Adam, his wide eyes darting nervously between the flashing lights and the unfamiliar faces of law enforcement. One officer approached, holding a small notepad. "Mr. Cross, we'll need your statement," he said, his tone professional but kind. "Do you have any idea why these men targeted you?" Adam glanced down at Jake, then back at the officer. "It started earlier tonight at the diner," he explained. "They were harassing my son, and I stepped in. Things escalated from there." The officer nodded, jotting down notes. "Do you know who they are?" Adam hesitated. "They're part of a group called the Crimson Fangs. I've heard the name before, but I'm not involved with them." The officer's expression darkened at the mention of the gang. "The Crimson Fangs have a reputation in this area. Extortion, theft, violence, you name it. We've been trying to shut them down for years, but they're slippery. If they've targeted you, it's serious." Jake's grip on Adam's arm tightened. "Will they come back?" he asked, his voice trembling. The officer crouched down to Jake's level, offering a reassuring smile. "We'll do everything we can to make sure they don't," he said. "But just in case, we'll have a patrol car keep an eye on your house for the next few days." Adam nodded, grateful but wary. "Thank you," he said. "But I'll be ready if they do." After the police left, the house felt eerily quiet. Jake couldn't shake the lingering fear as he climbed into bed, every creak of the house making him jump. Adam sat beside him, reading aloud from Jake's favorite adventure book to help him relax. "Dad," Jake said after a few minutes, interrupting the story. "How did you know what to do tonight? You weren't scared at all." Adam paused, the book resting on his lap. "It's not about not being scared," he said. "It's about staying calm and thinking clearly, even when you are scared. I've had a lot of practice." Jake frowned. "Because of the army?" Adam nodded. "Yeah. I learned a lot in the military. How to protect people. How to stay strong when things get tough." "Were you ever in danger?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Adam hesitated, then gave a small smile. "Sometimes. But I had good training and good people by my side. Just like I'll always be by yours." Jake relaxed a little, comforted by his dad's words. "I'm glad you're my dad," he said, yawning. Adam ruffled his hair. "And I'm glad you're my son. Now get some sleep. We'll talk more in the morning." The next day, Adam was on edge, though he didn't show it around Jake. While Jake played in the backyard, Adam made phone calls to a few trusted friends. One of them was Marcus Kane, a former Delta Force teammate who now worked in private security. "They came to your house?" Marcus asked, his voice sharp with concern. "Yeah," Adam replied. 5 of them. They're part of a gang called the Crimson Fangs. Ever heard of them?" "Unfortunately, yes," Marcus said. "They're not just some local thugs. They're part of a larger network. Organized, dangerous, and territorial. If they're after you, they won't let it go easily." "I figured," Adam said grimly. "That's why I'm calling. I might need some backup." "You know I'm in," Marcus said without hesitation. "When and where?" "Let's start with some recon," Adam said. "I want to know who I'm dealing with before they make their next move." "Smart," Marcus said. "I'll make some calls. We'll get eyes on them." Adam hung up, feeling a little more prepared. He wasn't the type to rely on others, but he knew the value of a strong team. If the Crimson Fangs wanted a fight, they'd soon learn they were up against more than just one man. Meanwhile, Jake was trying his best to act normal, but his mind kept wandering back to the fight. He couldn't help but worry about what might happen next. After lunch, he found Adam working in the garage, sorting through boxes of old gear. "What you doing, Dad?" Jake asked, stepping inside. Adam glanced at him with a small smile. "Just checking some things. Making sure we're ready for anything." Jake noticed a stack of equipment on the workbench: flashlights, ropes, and what looked like a heavy-duty first aid kit. "Is that army stuff?" he asked. "Some of it," Adam admitted. "It's always good to be prepared." Jake hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging at him. "Do you think they'll come back?" Adam stopped what he was doing and knelt down to Jake's level. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But if they do, I'll protect you. No matter what." Jake nodded, reassured by his dad's words. But the weight of the situation still hung over him. That night, Adam sat in the living room, his laptop open in front of him. Marcus had sent over some files, a mix of police reports and surveillance photos of the Crimson Fangs. Adam studied them carefully, piecing together what he could about the gang's hierarchy and habits. It didn't take long to identify the leader, Darren Reaper Graves. The man who had pulled a gun on him was more than just a local tough guy. He had a criminal record that stretched back years, including charges for assault, armed robbery, and racketeering. Adam's eyes narrowed as he scrolled through the information. Reaper wasn't someone to take lightly. But Adam had faced worse before, and he wasn't about to let this man threaten his family. At around midnight, Adam heard the faint hum of an engine outside. He moved quickly, switching off the lights and grabbing a flashlight. Peeking through the curtains, he spotted a dark van parked across the street. He didn't wait to see what they were planning. Adam slipped out the back door, moving silently through the shadows. He circled around, approaching the van from behind. As he got closer, he could hear voices coming from inside. "This is the place," one of them said. "Reaper wants us to send a message." Adam's jaw tightened. Not tonight. He moved swiftly, pulling open the driver's door and yanking the man inside out before he could react. The other occupants scrambled, but Adam was faster. He knocked the first one out with a precise strike and turned to face the others, his presence alone enough to make them hesitate. One of them reached for a weapon, but Adam grabbed his wrist, twisting it until the man cried out in pain. "You tell Reaper," Adam said, his voice deadly calm, "that this ends now. If he comes near my family again, he won't walk away." The man nodded frantically, and Adam released him, stepping back as the group stumbled into the van and sped off. Adam stood in the middle of the street, watching them disappear. The night was quiet again, but he knew the fight was far from over. The dark van disappeared into the night, its taillights shrinking into the horizon. Adam remained still, his senses heightened, scanning the shadows for any lingering threats. The adrenaline coursing through his veins began to ebb, replaced by a steely resolve. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Back inside, Adam found Jake standing at the top of the stairs, clutching the railing. His eyes were wide, and he looked smaller than ever in his pajamas. "Dad, what happened?" Jake asked, his voice trembling. Adam climbed the stairs and knelt in front of his son. "It's okay, Jake. Just some guys from the gang. I handled it, and they're gone now." Jake looked at his dad for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Will they come back?" Adam sighed, placing a hand on Jake's shoulder. "I don't know. But if they do, I'll be ready. You don't need to worry about that." Jake nodded again, though the fear in his eyes didn't fully fade. Adam guided him back to his room and tucked him into bed. "Try to get some sleep, buddy," he said softly. "What about you?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Adam smiled faintly. "I'll be right here if you need me." The next morning, Adam was up early, running a perimeter check around the house. Marcus had called during the night, confirming that he'd send a few trusted allies to watch the house in case the gang tried anything again. Adam appreciated the support but knew he couldn't rely on anyone else to do what needed to be done. Over breakfast, Jake sat quietly, picking at his pancakes. Adam could tell the events of the past few days were weighing on him. "Hey," Adam said gently. "You okay?" Jake shrugged. "I guess. It's just, why do they hate us so much?" The question hung in the air, heavier than any weapon Adam had ever carried. He set down his coffee cup and leaned forward. "Sometimes people are mean or hateful because they don't understand," he said. "It's not about you, Jake. It's about them. Their anger, their fear, it's their problem, not yours. But they still hurt people, Jake said, his voice small. Adam nodded. They do. And that's why it's important to stand up to them. To show them they can't win. Jake looked down at his plate, processing his dad's words. Is that why you're not scared of them? He asked. Adam smiled faintly. I'm not scared because I know how to handle them. And you don't need to be scared, either. As long as I'm here, they won't touch you. That's a promise. Later that afternoon, Marcus arrived, his SUV pulling into the driveway with quiet efficiency. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a no-nonsense demeanor, Marcus exuded the same calm confidence as Adam. He stepped out, greeted Adam with a firm handshake, and nodded at Jake, who watched curiously from the porch. Nice setup you've got here, Marcus said, glancing around the property. Plenty of visibility, solid cover points. You've done your homework. Adam chuckled. Old habits die hard. Good thing, Marcus said, his tone serious. I've got intel on Reaper and his crew. They're not happy about last night. Adam's expression hardened. What are they planning? Retaliation, Marcus said bluntly. They're rallying their guys. This isn't just about pride anymore, it's personal for Reaper. Word is he's calling in favors from their parent chapter. Adam cursed under his breath. How many? Enough to make it a problem, Marcus said. They're gearing up for a full-scale assault. Jake, overhearing bits of the conversation, felt his stomach twist. Dad, what does that mean? Adam placed a reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder. It means we're going to be extra careful. And we're not alone. He nodded toward Marcus. This is my friend Marcus. He's here to help. Jake looked up at Marcus, who smiled faintly. Hey kid, Marcus said. Your dad tells me you're pretty brave. That's a good thing. We might need a little bravery in the days ahead. For the next several hours, Adam and Marcus prepared the house. They fortified the doors and windows, installed extra motion-activated lights, and set up cameras to monitor the property. Adam explained each step to Jake, turning the preparations into a kind of game to ease his nerves. See this? Adam said, showing Jake how the cameras worked. Now we can see everything outside, even in the dark. Jake nodded, fascinated despite himself. Like spies. Exactly, Adam said with a grin. And you're my junior agent. Jake smiled for the first time in days, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. That night, the house was quiet, but Adam and Marcus remained vigilant. They took turns monitoring the cameras and patrolling the perimeter, their military instincts kicking in. Around 2 a.m., Marcus tapped Adam on the shoulder, pointing to one of the monitors. A group of figures was moving along the edge of the property, staying just beyond the range of the lights. They're here, Marcus said quietly. Adam nodded, his expression grim. Jake's asleep. Let's keep it that way. They moved silently through the house, positioning themselves near the front door. Adam motioned for Marcus to cover the back while he took the lead. He opened the door just enough to step outside, his movements precise and deliberate. The bikers didn't see him at first. They were clustered near the driveway, whispering among themselves. Adam crept closer, staying in the shadows. When he was within earshot, he spoke, his voice calm but commanding. You're trespassing, he said. The bikers froze, their heads snapping toward him. Reaper stepped forward, a sneer on his face. You again, he said. Thought you'd scare us off last night? Guess again. Adam's expression didn't change. This is your last chance. Leave now, or you'll regret it. Reaper laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You don't get it, do you? This isn't your fight anymore. It's ours. And we're going to win. Adam's eyes narrowed. Not tonight. Reaper's hand went to his belt, and Adam saw the glint of metal. But before Reaper could draw his weapon, a sharp whistle cut through the air. Marcus emerged from the shadows, his own weapon trained on the group. Drop it, Marcus said, his voice low and firm. Now. The bikers hesitated, but Reaper sneered, his confidence faltering. You think we're scared of two guys? Adam took a step closer, his voice like steel. You should be. Reaper looked around, realizing his group was outmaneuvered. The fight wasn't going the way he had planned, and Adam could see the cracks forming in his resolve. But the tension was far from over. One wrong move, and the night could still end in bloodshed. The bikers stood frozen, their bravado waning as Adam and Marcus held their ground. The tension crackled like electricity in the cool night air. Adam's calm demeanor only seemed to unnerve Reaper further, his confidence visibly faltering. "You don't get to call the shots here." Reaper spat, his hand still hovering near his weapon. "This is our town, our rules." Adam didn't move. His voice was steady, almost conversational. "Your rules don't apply here. You've got two options: leave peacefully, or stay and regret it." Marcus, standing a few feet behind Adam, kept his weapon trained on the group. "If you think this is a bluff, go ahead and find out," he said, his tone ice-cold. The other bikers exchanged uneasy glances. They outnumbered Adam and Marcus, but the former soldier's calm confidence was unnerving. The men before them weren't bluffing, and they knew it. "You're out of your league, Reaper," Adam said, taking a step forward. "You're not dealing with scared civilians anymore. You're dealing with me. So ask yourself, is this fight worth it?" Reaper's jaw tightened. He glanced at his men, clearly realizing that they weren't as eager to fight as he was. Slowly, he raised his hands, signaling for his crew to back off. "This isn't over," Reaper growled. "You think you've won? You don't know who you're messing with." Adam's eyes didn't waver. "I could say the same to you." The bikers retreated, muttering curses under their breath. Marcus kept his weapon raised until the group was out of sight, their motorcycles roaring to life in the distance. Only then did he lower it, his sharp eyes scanning the area for any stragglers. Adam exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Thanks for the backup," he said. Marcus smirked. "Always. But this isn't over. You know that, right?" Adam nodded grimly. "I know." Inside the house, Jake had woken up. He stood at the top of the stairs, his small face peeking over the railing. "Dad," he called, his voice shaky. Adam and Marcus exchanged a glance before Adam stepped inside. "It's okay, Jake," he said, walking toward him. "They're gone." Jake's eyes searched his dad's face, looking for reassurance. "Are you sure?" Adam crouched down in front of him. "I'm sure. Marcus and I made sure they left. They're not coming back tonight." Jake hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." Adam placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "You're safe, buddy. I promise." Jake looked at Marcus, who gave him a small nod. "Your dad's got this kid," Marcus said. "And I'm here to help." Jake managed a small smile, though the fear in his eyes lingered. Adam guided him back to bed, staying by his side until he fell asleep again. The next day, Adam and Marcus sat at the kitchen table, going over their next steps. A map of the area was spread out in front of them, marked with circles and notes about known Crimson Fang's hangouts. "We need to end this before it escalates further," Marcus said. "Reaper's not the type to back down quietly." Adam nodded. "Agreed. But we can't risk them coming here again. Jake's already been through too much. So we take the fight to them," Marcus said bluntly. "We hit them where it hurts." Adam leaned back in his chair, considering the options. He didn't want to escalate the situation, but he also knew that waiting for the gang to strike again wasn't an option. "We need leverage," he said. "Something that forces Reaper to back off without dragging this out." Marcus tapped a spot on the map. "This is their main clubhouse. If we can get in there, we might find what we need: records, plans, anything we can use." Adam studied the map, his mind already working through the logistics. "It's risky," he said, "but it might be our best shot." Marcus grinned. "Risky's our middle name, remember?" Adam smirked despite himself. "Let's gear up." That evening, while Jake stayed with a trusted neighbor, Adam and Marcus prepared for their mission. They dressed in dark, tactical clothing and packed the necessary gear: flashlights, lock-picking tools, and communication devices. Adam double-checked everything, his meticulous nature kicking in. "You ready?" Marcus asked as they loaded into the SUV. Adam nodded. "Let's do this." They drove in silence, their focus razor-sharp. As they approached the Crimson Fang's clubhouse, they parked a few blocks away and moved on foot. The building was an old warehouse on the outskirts of town, its windows boarded up and a faint glow emanating from inside. Adam and Marcus crouched in the shadows, observing the area. A couple of bikers stood near the entrance, smoking and chatting. "We'll need to draw them away," Marcus whispered. Adam nodded, pulling a small device from his pocket, a remote-controlled sound emitter. He placed it on the ground and activated it, sending a series of loud, clanking noises echoing from the opposite side of the building. The bikers stiffened, exchanging confused glances. "What was that?" one of them muttered. Go check it out, the other said, motioning toward the noise. As the bikers walked off, Adam and Marcus moved quickly, slipping through a side entrance. Inside, the air smelled of oil and stale beer. They kept to the shadows, moving silently through the cluttered space. They found what they were looking for in a back room, a makeshift office with a desk piled high with papers and a laptop. Marcus began sifting through the documents while Adam worked on the computer, his fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. Got it, Adam said after a few minutes. Records of their operations, names, locations, it's all here. Marcus grinned. Reaper's not going to like this. Good, Adam said. Let's get out of here before they realize what's missing. They packed up and slipped back into the night, their mission successful. But as they moved toward the exit, they heard voices nearby. The bikers had returned, and they didn't sound happy. Someone's been in here, one of them shouted. Adam and Marcus exchanged a glance. Their escape wasn't going to be as quiet as their entry. Plan B? Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. Adam smirked. Plan B. With that, they moved, ready to face whatever came next. Adam and Marcus darted into the shadows of the dimly lit warehouse as the bikers' angry voices grew louder. The two former soldiers moved like ghosts, staying low and silent, their senses on high alert. The bikers fanned out, flashlights slicing through the darkness as they searched the building. "We know you're here," one of them shouted, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "Come out now, and maybe we won't mess you up too bad." Marcus smirked, leaning close to Adam. "They really think that's gonna work?" Adam gave a slight nod toward a side exit across the room. "Let's not stick around to find out." The two men moved in perfect synchronization, weaving through the maze of crates and machinery. Adam's sharp eyes scanned every corner, while Marcus covered their six, his grip firm on the flashlight he'd repurposed as a blunt weapon. They were almost at the door when the sound of heavy boots approached from their left. Adam signaled for Marcus to halt, pulling them into the shadows behind a stack of pallets. The footsteps stopped just a few feet away, the faint beam of a flashlight sweeping dangerously close to their hiding spot. "Nothing over here," the biker called to his companions. Maybe they already split. Adam's muscles tensed, his hand hovering near the small baton strapped to his side. But the biker didn't linger, his boots retreating toward the others. Adam exhaled silently, motioning for Marcus to continue. They reached the exit, and Marcus carefully pushed the door open. The cool night air rushed in, but just as they stepped outside, a voice barked behind them. "There they are." Adam and Marcus turned to see two bikers charging toward them, one wielding a wrench and the other brandishing a length of chain. There was no time to retreat. "Go loud?" Marcus asked, his voice calm despite the situation. "Go loud," Adam confirmed. The first biker swung the wrench, but Adam sidestepped with ease, delivering a swift elbow to the man's ribs. The biker stumbled, gasping for air, and Adam finished him with a sharp blow to the back of the knee, sending him to the ground. Meanwhile, Marcus faced the second biker, who lashed out with the chain. Marcus blocked the strike with his forearm, then countered with a solid punch to the man's jaw. The biker staggered, and Marcus didn't hesitate, following up with a precise kick that sent the chain flying out of his grasp. The commotion alerted the others inside. The sound of shouting and heavy footsteps grew louder as more bikers rushed toward the exit. "Time to move," Adam said, grabbing the wrench from the fallen biker as he and Marcus sprinted toward the perimeter fence. They reached the SUV just as the first of the bikers burst through the warehouse doors, their silhouettes illuminated by the harsh glow of floodlights. Adam and Marcus climbed in, and Marcus gunned the engine, the tires screeching as they sped off into the night. The bikers gave chase, their motorcycles roaring to life. Adam glanced in the side mirror, counting at least 6 of them gaining ground. "They're persistent," Marcus said, his tone almost amused. "Keep driving," Adam said, reaching into the back seat for the emergency bag they'd packed earlier. He pulled out a handful of smoke grenades, quickly arming one. "Let's slow them down." He rolled down the window and tossed the grenade onto the road. A thick cloud of smoke billowed up behind them, enveloping the bikers. Tires screeched as the gang struggled to maintain control, 2 of the bikes skidding into the ditch. "That'll buy us some time," Adam said, rolling the window back up. Marcus took a sharp turn onto a dirt road, the SUV bouncing over the uneven terrain. The remaining bikers were still on their tail, their headlights bobbing wildly in the darkness. "Got another trick up your sleeve?" Marcus asked. Adam pulled out a second grenade, this one designed to emit a piercing siren when activated. He tossed it behind them, and the shrill noise echoed through the trees, disorienting their pursuers. Another biker veered off the road, crashing into a thicket of bushes. 3 down, Marcus said with a grin. Not bad. But the remaining bikers weren't giving up. One of them pulled out a handgun, firing a few wild shots that pinged off the SUV's rear bumper. Okay, that's enough, Marcus muttered, his playful tone gone. He jerked the wheel, sending the SUV into a tight spin that brought them face to face with their pursuers. Hold on, Adam said, stepping out of the vehicle before Marcus could protest. The bikers skidded to a halt, their engines idling as they sized up the lone figure standing in the middle of the road. Adam held his hands out, his stance calm and non-threatening. You really want to do this? He asked, his voice carrying over the noise. The lead biker revved his engine, his weapon gleaming in the moonlight. You're out of moves, old man. Adam smirked. Not even close. In one fluid motion, Adam raised his arm and hurled the wrench he'd taken earlier. It struck the lead biker's front wheel, sending the bike into a violent spin. The rider was thrown clear, landing in a heap on the ground. The other bikers hesitated, their confidence shaken. Adam took a step forward, his expression hard. Leave. Now. The remaining bikers exchanged glances, weighing their options. Finally, one of them spoke. This isn't worth it, he muttered, turning his bike around. The others followed, their engines fading into the night. Adam stood there for a moment, watching to make sure they were gone. Then he turned and climbed back into the SUV. You okay? Marcus asked, his grip steady on the wheel. Yeah, Adam said, rolling his shoulder. But Reaper's not going to let this go. Marcus nodded grimly. Then we'll be ready for him. Let's finish this. As they drove away, Adam glanced at the laptop sitting on the back seat. The information they'd gathered could be the key to dismantling the Crimson Fangs for good. But Adam knew the fight wasn't over, not yet. Reaper wasn't the type to back down without a final confrontation, and Adam would be ready when that time came. The drive back to Adam's house was quiet. Marcus focused on the road, his sharp eyes darting occasionally to the rearview mirror, while Adam mulled over their next move. The bikers had been scattered for now, but it was only a temporary reprieve. Adam knew Reaper wouldn't rest until he regained control of the situation, and that meant striking before the gang could regroup. They arrived just before dawn. Jake, who had spent the night with their neighbor, was still asleep when Adam checked on him. He lingered for a moment by the door, watching his son's peaceful expression. Jake didn't know the full extent of the danger they were in, and Adam intended to keep it that way. In the living room, Marcus was already poring over the data they'd retrieved from the Crimson Fangs clubhouse. A map of the gang's operations lit up the laptop screen, marked with key locations and names. This is bigger than I thought, Marcus said, his voice low. They're not just running extortion and theft. Look at this. He pointed to a list of transactions. Drug trafficking, weapons deals. These guys are tapped into some serious criminal networks. Adam studied the screen, his jaw tightening. If we expose this, it'll bring heat down on the entire organization. Marcus nodded. But we need to do it right. If we go public now, Reaper will retaliate before the authorities can act. We need leverage, something that forces him to back off permanently. Adam leaned back, considering their options. The files included detailed records of the gang's financial dealings, but one entry stood out, a shipment scheduled for that evening at an abandoned industrial site. This could be it, Adam said, pointing to the entry. If we disrupt their operation and capture evidence, we'll have enough to cripple their network. Marcus grinned. A direct hit. I like it. Adam nodded, but his expression remained serious. It's risky. They'll be expecting trouble after last night. We'll need to be careful. When are we not? Marcus replied, already gearing up for the mission. That evening, after ensuring Jake was safe with a neighbor, Adam and Marcus prepared to leave. The industrial site was located on the outskirts of the city, a sprawling complex of rusting warehouses and empty lots. As they approached, the glow of headlights and the low hum of engines confirmed the gang was already on site. They parked a safe distance away, slipping into the shadows to scout the area. Several bikers were stationed around the perimeter, their weapons visible under the harsh glow of portable lights. In the center of the lot, a large truck was being loaded with crates. That's the shipment, Marcus whispered. Looks like they're moving fast. Adam scanned the scene, noting the positions of the guards and the truck. We'll need a distraction to get close. Marcus smirked, pulling a small remote from his pocket. I came prepared. He activated the remote, and a series of explosions erupted on the far side of the lot, sending plumes of smoke and fire into the air. The bikers shouted in alarm, scrambling toward the source of the noise. That's our cue, Marcus said. The two men moved quickly, slipping past the distracted guards and toward the truck. Adam climbed into the cab while Marcus began examining the crates. Inside, he found what they'd expected: illegally modified weapons and packages of drugs. This is enough to bury them, Marcus said, snapping photos with his phone. Adam started the truck, the engine roaring to life. The noise drew the attention of a few bikers, who turned and shouted in alarm. One of them fired a shot, the bullet pinging off the side of the truck. Time to go, Marcus yelled, climbing into the passenger seat. Adam hit the gas, the truck lurching forward as the bikers gave chase. They swerved through the lot, dodging obstacles and incoming gunfire. Marcus leaned out the window, returning fire with a handgun, buying them precious seconds. Hang on, Adam shouted, steering the truck toward the gate. The bikers were closing in when Adam spotted a narrow alley between two warehouses. He turned sharply, the truck barely squeezing through as sparks flew from its sides. The bikers hesitated, unable to follow without dismounting. We're clear, Marcus said, catching his breath. For now. Adam drove to a prearranged drop point where a trusted contact was waiting. The contact, a former law enforcement officer turned private investigator, had the resources to deliver the evidence to the authorities without tipping off the gang. This is solid, the contact said, examining the crates. I'll make sure it gets where it needs to go. Adam nodded. Thanks. Let me know when it's done. As they drove back to the neighborhood, Adam's thoughts were heavy. They'd struck a major blow against the Crimson Fangs, but Reaper wasn't the type to give up easily. He would come after them with everything he had, and Adam needed to be ready. That night, Adam tucked Jake into bed, his heart heavy with the weight of the battle ahead. Jake looked up at him, his eyes filled with trust. Are we going to be okay, Dad? Jake asked. Adam leaned down and kissed his forehead. Yes, Jake. We're going to be okay. But as he sat alone in the living room later, watching the darkened street through the window, Adam knew the final confrontation was coming. Reaper wouldn't stop until he'd exacted his revenge. And Adam wouldn't stop until his son was safe. The quiet night felt like the calm before a storm. Adam sat in the living room, his eyes fixed on the street outside. Marcus was in the kitchen, meticulously cleaning a pistol and double-checking their remaining supplies. The evidence they delivered was a devastating blow to the Crimson Fangs, but Adam knew Reaper wouldn't take it lying down. He's going to come at us hard, Marcus said, breaking the silence. No more half measures. Adam nodded. Which means we need to be one step ahead. Marcus leaned against the doorway, his expression grim. What's the play? We wait for him to bring the fight here, or we take it to him? Adam considered the question carefully. We need to draw him out. If we sit here waiting, Jake could get caught in the crossfire. I won't let that happen. Marcus smirked faintly. You've got an idea, don't you? Adam nodded. Reaper thrives on control. We take that away from him. He pulled out the map they'd been using to track the gang's movements. This is their secondary clubhouse, Adam said, pointing to a location on the outskirts of the city. It's not as fortified as their main base, but it's where they regroup after major operations. Marcus studied the map. You're thinking we hit them again. Force Reaper to show his hand. Exactly, Adam said. We hit them fast, before they have a chance to recover. Reaper will have no choice but to face us. Marcus grinned. You really do like living dangerously. Adam's expression didn't change. It's not about us. It's about ending this before anyone else gets hurt. Before they left, Adam ensured Jake would be safe. He called Becky, the neighbor who had watched Jake the night before. She was hesitant at first, sensing the danger surrounding the situation, but Adam's calm reassurance won her over. I promise this will be the last time, Adam said. I just need to know he's safe. Becky agreed, and Adam walked Jake over to her house. He knelt in front of his son before leaving, holding his gaze. Jake, I need you to listen to Becky and stay inside, no matter what happens. Can you do that for me? Jake nodded, though his eyes were filled with worry. Are you going to stop them, Dad? Adam smiled faintly. Yes, I am. And I'll come back for you when it's over. He hugged Jake tightly, then left without looking back. The drive to the Crimson Fang's secondary base was tense but focused. Marcus kept the mood light with occasional quips, but Adam's mind was laser-focused on the task ahead. They parked a safe distance away, slipping into the shadows to survey the area. The clubhouse was a run-down building surrounded by motorcycles and a couple of battered cars. Several gang members milled around outside, smoking and talking. The main door was guarded by 2 bikers, both armed. "Looks like Reaper's trying to regroup," Marcus said. "You think he's here?" Adam shook his head. "Not yet. But he'll come once he hears about this." Marcus grinned. "Good. Let's give him something to hear about." They moved swiftly, disabling the guards at the perimeter with silent efficiency. Adam took down the first with a chokehold, while Marcus used a taser on the second. The remaining bikers were inside, unaware of the storm about to hit. Marcus rigged a small explosive near the clubhouse's generator, setting it to detonate in 2 minutes. As they moved into position near the entrance, Adam signaled for Marcus to hold. "Wait for the lights to go out," Adam whispered. "Then we move." The explosive went off with a muffled boom, plunging the building into darkness. Shouts of confusion erupted from inside as Adam and Marcus breached the door. The gang members scrambled to respond, but they were no match for the precision and speed of the 2 former soldiers. One by one, the bikers were subdued, their weapons confiscated. Adam and Marcus moved like a well-oiled machine, their training shining through as they cleared the room. Within minutes, the clubhouse was secured. Adam grabbed one of the gang members, a wiry man with a snake tattoo coiled around his neck, and pinned him against the wall. "Where's Reaper?" Adam demanded. The man squirmed, his eyes darting around for help that wasn't coming. "I don't know, man. He said he'd be here later. That's all I know." Adam tightened his grip. "When?" "I don't know. He didn't say," the man stammered. Adam released him, shoving him toward Marcus. "Tie him up. We'll wait." Hours passed, and the tension grew thick. The subdued bikers were restrained in the corner, their fear palpable. Adam and Marcus kept watch, waiting for the inevitable arrival of Reaper. When the sound of engines roared in the distance, Adam's jaw tightened. He exchanged a glance with Marcus, who gave a nod. Showtime. The headlights of several motorcycles illuminated the road as Reaper and his crew arrived. Unlike the scattered group from before, this was a coordinated force. Reaper dismounted his bike, his face twisted with rage as he took in the scene. "Cross," he bellowed, his voice echoing in the still night. "Come out and face me, you coward." Adam stepped into the open, his movements deliberate. Marcus flanked him, his weapon drawn. "Reaper," Adam said calmly. "This ends now." Reaper laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You think you can walk into my house and make demands? You're out of your league." Adam's expression didn't waver. "You're done. Your crew, your operation, it's over. Walk away now, or you won't leave at all." Reaper's hand went to his belt, his fingers brushing the handle of a knife. Big talk for a dead man. The bikers behind him revved their engines, the sound filling the air like a war drum. Marcus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "Last warning," he said. "Turn around and leave, or we'll bury you right here." Reaper sneered, motioning for his men to advance. "Get them." The final showdown had begun. The roar of engines filled the air as Reaper's bikers surged forward, their headlights cutting through the night like blazing torches. Adam and Marcus stood their ground, their calm focus contrasting with the chaos barreling toward them. "Let's make this count," Marcus muttered, his voice steady despite the odds. Adam nodded, his gaze locked on Reaper. "It ends here." As the first biker charged, Marcus moved with precision, stepping aside and delivering a calculated strike to the rider's arm. The biker lost control, tumbling off the bike and crashing to the ground. Adam spun toward another attacker, sidestepping a wild swing of a crowbar and countering with a swift punch that sent the man staggering. The bikers circled like wolves, revving their engines and shouting obscenities. Reaper hung back, watching with a predatory grin as his men engaged Adam and Marcus. 2 bikers rushed at Adam from opposite sides, their weapons raised. Adam ducked low, grabbing a length of chain from the ground and using it to block one swing while delivering a brutal kick to the second biker's knee. The man crumpled with a scream as Adam turned to face the next attacker. Marcus, meanwhile, had his hands full with a trio of bikers wielding pipes and bats. He moved with the fluidity of years of training, deflecting blows and landing precise counterstrikes. One biker lunged with a bat, but Marcus sidestepped, twisting the weapon free and using it to knock the man unconscious. Despite their skill, the sheer number of opponents began to press in. Adam and Marcus fought side by side, their movements synchronized, but the bikers were relentless. "Gotta thin the herd," Marcus said, his breathing steady despite the exertion. Adam spotted an opportunity, a biker revving his engine a little too close. He sprinted forward, grabbing the handlebars and yanking the man off the bike. With a roar, Adam turned the machine toward the pack, sending it roaring into the fray. The bikers scattered, momentarily disoriented. "That's one way to do it," Marcus quipped, taking advantage of the chaos to knock another biker to the ground. Reaper finally stepped forward, his sneer replaced with a cold glare. He pulled a large knife from his belt, twirling it in his hand as he approached. "Enough of this," he bellowed. "You want to take me down, Cross? Do it yourself." Adam turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "Gladly." The two men squared off, the bikers forming a loose circle around them. Reaper's confidence radiated as he slashed the air with the knife, testing Adam's reactions. "Big hero," Reaper sneered. "All this trouble for what? A kid who'll grow up weak because his daddy couldn't teach him to stand up for himself." Adam's jaw tightened, but he didn't take the bait. He moved with precision, dodging Reaper's first swing and countering with a jab that grazed the man's shoulder. Reaper laughed, more out of bravado than humor. "Come on, old man." Reaper taunted. "Show me what you've got." Reaper lunged again, but Adam sidestepped, delivering a hard elbow to the man's ribs. The blow knocked the wind out of Reaper, but he recovered quickly, slashing toward Adam's midsection. Adam blocked with his forearm, wincing as the blade tore through his sleeve. "You're slower than I thought," Adam said, his voice calm but cutting. Reaper snarled, his composure slipping. He swung wildly, his frustration leaving him open. Adam seized the moment, grabbing Reaper's wrist and twisting it sharply. The knife clattered to the ground as Reaper cried out in pain. Adam followed with a knee to Reaper's stomach, sending him to his knees. The bikers watched in stunned silence as their leader gasped for air. "You think you're in control," Adam said, his voice low and steady. "But all you've done is prove you're a coward." Reaper glared up at him, his face twisted with rage. "You don't get it, Cross. This isn't just me. The Crimson Fangs don't stop." Adam leaned closer, his eyes cold. "Then I'll make sure they do." Before Reaper could respond, the distant wail of sirens cut through the night. The bikers exchanged nervous glances, their bravado crumbling. Marcus smirked, holding up the small radio he'd been carrying. "Called in some backup," he said. "Figured we'd end this the right way." Reaper's eyes widened as the realization hit. "You set us up." Adam stood tall, his gaze unwavering. "You did that to yourself." As the police vehicles pulled into the lot, their lights flashing, the bikers panicked. Some tried to flee, but Adam and Marcus had already blocked the exits. Officers poured out of the cars, weapons drawn, shouting orders. "Hands up. Everyone down on the ground." Reaper struggled to his feet, but Adam grabbed him by the collar, shoving him toward the approaching officers. "This one's yours," Adam said. The officer cuffed Reaper, who spat a string of curses as he was led away. The rest of the bikers surrendered without a fight, their will to resist completely shattered. An hour later, the lot was cleared, and the Crimson Fangs were loaded into police vehicles. Adam and Marcus stood by their SUV, watching as the officers secured the scene. "Well," Marcus said, "I'd say that's one way to end a gang war." Adam exhaled, the weight of the night finally settling on his shoulders. "It's not over until Jake is safe." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "He's safe because of you. Let's get you home." As they drove back, Adam's thoughts were on Jake. This fight had pushed him to his limits, but he'd done it for one reason: to protect his son. When they arrived, Becky met them at the door with Jake, who ran to his dad and hugged him tightly. "Is it over?" Jake asked, his voice muffled against Adam's chest. Adam knelt down, holding his son close. "Yeah, buddy. It's over." And for the first time in days, Adam felt a sense of peace. He'd won the battle that mattered most. The morning after the showdown with the Crimson Fangs dawned quiet and serene. Sunlight streamed through the windows of Adam's house, bathing the living room in a warm glow. For the first time in what felt like weeks, the air was free of tension. Jake sat at the kitchen table, eating a stack of pancakes Adam had made. His mood was lighter, and his curiosity had returned. "Dad, what happened last night? Did you stop them?" Adam smiled faintly, setting a glass of orange juice in front of his son. "Yes, Jake. They're not going to bother us, or anyone else again." Jake's eyes widened. "Really? How do you know?" Adam sat down across from him, his tone calm and reassuring. "Because the police have them now. Their leader and the rest of the gang won't be able to hurt anyone anymore." Jake processed this for a moment, then nodded. "Good. They were mean." "They were," Adam agreed. "But you don't have to worry about them anymore. You're safe now." Jake smiled, a genuine relieved smile that melted away the fear he'd been carrying. "Thanks, Dad." Later that day, Marcus stopped by to check in. Jake greeted him at the door, his newfound confidence evident in the way he spoke. "Hi, Mr. Marcus. Are you here to see Dad?" Marcus grinned. "I am. But I also wanted to see how you're doing. You okay, kid?" Jake nodded. "Yeah." Dad said it's over. Marcus glanced at Adam, who appeared in the doorway, a silent understanding passing between them. "It is," Marcus said. "Your dad made sure of that." Jake beamed, clearly proud of his father. "He's the best." Marcus laughed, patting Jake on the head. "You've got that right." The rest of the week passed uneventfully. Adam focused on restoring a sense of normalcy for Jake. They went fishing again, this time actually catching a few fish. Jake laughed as Adam fumbled with the net, his carefree joy a testament to how much safer he felt. The incident with the Crimson Fangs became a story Jake would tell years later, always emphasizing how brave his dad had been. But for now, it was enough that the fear was gone, replaced by a renewed sense of security. One evening, as Adam tucked Jake into bed, Jake looked up at him with wide, earnest eyes. "Dad, were you ever scared?" Adam hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, Jake. I was. But being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means doing what you have to, even when you are." Jake thought about this, then said, "I want to be brave like you someday." Adam smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "You already are." Months later, the Crimson Fangs were dismantled completely. The evidence Adam and Marcus had provided led to convictions, and the gang's grip on the town was broken. Life returned to a peaceful rhythm, and Adam found himself enjoying the simple moments with Jake even more. One quiet afternoon, as they walked home from the park, Jake looked up at Adam. "Dad, do you think those bad guys learned their lesson?" Adam chuckled. "I hope so, Jake. But more importantly, I hope they never bother anyone again." Jake nodded, satisfied with the answer. "I think they know not to mess with us." Adam laughed, ruffling his son's hair. "You're probably right." As they reached the house, the sun setting behind them, Adam felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had protected his son, faced down danger, and ensured their peace. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to fully relax, knowing the fight was over, and he had won. The bond between father and son had only grown stronger, forged in the fire of adversity. Together, they stepped into the future, ready for whatever life might bring, but confident that no matter what, they would face it together.